Now I'm happy to bring to the stage Carmel Martin. And she's familiar to many of you from her time on Capitol Hill, the U.S. Department of Education, and the Center for American Progress. We're honored to have her here. And she's now back in the policy arena as Deputy Director for Economic Mobility at the White House Domestic Policy Council. So please join me in welcoming Carmel. Carmel, great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for all of you for listening for a little while. Thank you. It's such an honor to be with all of you.
Well, we decided that the theme of this talk was really about kind of named after the popular television show. I don't know if you've seen it. I know you don't have too much time to watch television, but America's Got Talent, if you've ever heard about this. And we named it that because, in order to have a thriving economy, we really need to make sure that we nurture all of Americans' talent, and to do so more equitably than we have in the past. So wanted to talk to you about, what is the administration doing on that front in terms of policy and other initiatives. So that's the theme of our talk today. And why don't we start with a first question, which is, it builds on a theme that's been pretty consistent in our conversations at Horizons, which have focused on multiple and alternative pathways to good jobs. So I wanted to ask you, what role do you see the federal government playing in changing the narrative around alternative and multiple pathways? And maybe you can start by just unpacking what those terms mean to you.
Yeah. Well, one of many reasons that I'm so proud to work for President Biden is because of his approach to this issue. If you look at his policies and go back to when he was running for office, we didn't have a higher ed policy and a workforce policy. We had a policy that we called education beyond high school. And that was very deliberate and really stemmed from the president's vision in this space. I guess the first thing I would say in terms of the terms, Joel, that you're using is I think the president's vision is much more focused on multiple pathways as opposed to alternative pathways, because alternative, it sort of presumes that somehow it's lesser, arguably. So I think if you look at his approach to these issues, he thinks about it as if we're going to have an economy that works for everyone and we're able to build back better, we need to ensure that everyone has opportunities for high quality pathways that lead to good jobs. So basically our focus in the administration is threefold in this space. First and foremost is how do we promote access to pathways to good jobs that don't necessarily require a 4-year or advanced degree, and there's lots of work that we're doing there. Second is how do we reduce the cost of those of post-secondary education, and then the third is how do we help the generation of people who have had to take on unmanageable debt in order to get the education and training they need, often not actually getting the education and training they need. How do we help them manage that debt? So, we don't have time to go into each of those pillars, but I would just say briefly in the context of expanding access to pathways that don't necessarily require a degree, we're focused on fulfilling his vision for transformational investments in the workforce development system, which he put forward through his American Jobs Plan. And Congress hasn't quite gotten us there yet, but we're going to keep chipping away at it, and we're able to secure some investments both through the appropriations process and through the bipartisan infrastructure bill. It also means investing in apprenticeships. That's been a big focus for the administration. In terms of making the cost of college affordable, we have not given up on the idea that we could make 2 years of education at a community college, education and training at a community college free, not just for new first-time students, but also for workers looking to retrain. And more, as importantly, we're really focused on increasing student aid through the president has a plan for doubling the Pell Grant, which used to cover 80% of the cost of college, and now it's more like 30%. So we were able to make progress on that. We increased the maximum Pell Grant by $400 since the president's been in office, but there's still a lot more work to be done there. And then in terms of student debt, there's lots of work happening. Just this week, we made the largest debt cancellation action with respect to defrauded borrowers. We've canceled $25 billion of student debt for about 1.4 million borrowers. So lots more to say on each of these, but those are the big pieces.
Very important work. I want to pick up on one of the things you mentioned, which is apprenticeship, as one of the multiple pathways.
Yeah.
Appreciate that differentiation from alternative. Could you say more about the administration's vision for the future of apprenticeship?
Yeah, so this is an area that the president just feels strongly that if we're going to fulfill the promise of the programs and vision around our clean energy economy, care economy, and the infrastructure, and fulfill the promise of the infrastructure bill, we really need to dramatically expand apprenticeships, but also expand programs that are designed to ensure that apprenticeships are equitably available, that there's so many Americans, women, people of color who haven't historically had access to these high quality training programs that do lead to very good jobs. So in terms of implementation of the infrastructure bill, but also the Department of Labor is making a really concerted effort to ensure that we're expanding access to high quality apprenticeships. And big picture, I would say, with respect to apprenticeships, but with respect to our approach to job training more broadly, we're trying to ensure that we're promoting some key pillars as we advance the work. First and foremost, that the programs are attached to good jobs, so focused on in-demand sectors. The second is that there's high quality on-the-job learning. The third would be that there's wraparound supports. Secretary Raimondo said to me one time something that really stuck with me, that one of the most important things she did in Rhode Island was make sure that the job training programs were located at a bus stop. If people don't have access to transportation, childcare, academic tutoring services, then they're not going to be able to successfully complete these programs. The fourth thing I would say is we're really focused on breaking down silos in the system between the education system and the workforce system, which really is the same system, between employers, so they're focused on industry-wide initiatives, between high schools and the post-secondary system. And all of that means if we're going to do those four things I just mentioned, we really have to be focused on partnerships, which I know is what you all are focused on and doing every single day. So we're really trying to promote that concept of partnerships across employers, training providers, unions, community-based organizations.
You said one of the magic words, partnerships.
Yeah,
those are so important. So really appreciate that, and appreciate the investment you're already making in trying to increase and get out to the field along these lines. So just, kind of a question about federal spending. It's one thing to allocate the dollars. It's another to make sure that they're being put to work well. How are you working to ensure that federal workforce dollars are better deployed?
Well, first is by setting out some core principles that we're trying to abide by across the executive branch. We lead at the Domestic Policy Council, we lead an interagency policy committee is what we call it, where we're trying to bring the players across the executive branch together to think about what the core pillars should be and make sure that as they're delivering on programs that they're keeping that in mind. As you all know, the Department of Labor is sort of the core partner with us. They have a fantastic good jobs initiative where they're working hard to work with people across the country around formulating good workforce development programs. But also they spend a lot of their time with their colleagues across the executive branch with the agencies. We're trying to walk the walk, not just talk the talk in terms of breaking down silos. So that means when we're advancing the president's vision around workforce development, we're spending as much time with the Department of Energy and the Department of Commerce as we are with the Department of Labor and the Department of Education. And both the Secretary Walsh and Secretary Cardona are very committed to breaking down silos between the Education Department and the Labor Department and working to advance the work there. A big focus for us, there's many things that we're working on, but right now, making sure that the historic investment that the infrastructure bill offers leads to good jobs, so focus on ensuring that there's high labor standards attached to those jobs, but also trying to turn over every stone to make sure that we're deploying as much resources as we can for workforce development programs, including pre-apprenticeships, job training programs. So there are some dedicated resources in that bill, but we're also working with each of the agencies to make sure that as they put out grant initiatives, that they're asking the people applying for those jobs to tell them how they're approaching the workforce development challenges inherent in the bill. And I think we're going to hear from one of my colleagues from Commerce a little bit later about an exciting initiative that they're doing. But I think that the core of our focus is let's identify what the key principles are and make sure that we're just using every lever at our disposal to advance the president's vision.
Thanks so much for that. We really appreciate the focus on alignment between the agencies, and we've seen that demonstrated here at the conference as well. Everybody's obviously singing in harmony, so that's terrific. So to harken back to the theme of America's Got Talent and harmonizing and all that kind of good thing, it's the theme of making sure that we enable everyone to contribute to the economy. What steps is the administration taking to promote equitable opportunities for worker advancement?
Yeah, so this is another thing that is a core principle for the president. On day one, he issued an executive order that basically dictates that in everything we do, we're thinking about equity and making sure that everyone can benefit from the riches of our country. My boss, Susan Rice, the head of the Domestic Policy Council, is in charge of carrying out the provisions of that executive order. And I think in this space is one of our priority areas. I guess there's so many things to talk about in this space. The three that I think are particularly important is tackling pipeline challenges, which means thinking more robustly about making sure that everyone has access to high quality apprenticeships through pre-apprenticeships, but also, again, looking at high school. We have an initiative around connected high schools, so we're ensuring that people are getting the exposure early to high quality training and education programs and careers. Second big area of focus for us in this space is ensuring that formerly incarcerated individuals have good access to job opportunities. We have a first of its kind collaboration between the Department of Justice and the Department of Labor around a $145 million grant program that's designed to ensure that there's high quality reentry and job training programs for those coming back to their communities. We've also expanded Second Chance Pell, so more incarcerated individuals have access to post-secondary education while incarcerated. And then in the infrastructure programs, we're asking agencies to, where they can, make it a priority for employers to hire those who are formerly incarcerated. So that's an area that we're really excited about. And then the last one I'll mention is something I mentioned earlier, which is the president has asked us to really think hard about how we can promote skills-based hiring. We're trying to, again, walk the walk there by applying those principles through federal hiring for federal employees, but also looking at procurement policies in that space, and then working with the Department of Labor to see if we can provide technical support to employers to do more skills-based hiring. So a lot more to say, but those are things that are particularly exciting for me.
I love the theme about walking the walk. That's terrific, evident in a lot of what you're doing. Well, we're going to wrap up with one more question for you that I know is on the minds of many here, and it's about how is the administration working to ensure that the talent needs generated by the increased investment in infrastructure and all those projects, how will you ensure that those needs are met?
Yeah, so this is probably the thing that I'm spending more of my time on than others at the moment. It's something that we frankly, are nervous about. We feel like there's a lot to be done there. We need all of your help in order to be able to successfully implement the infrastructure programs. So first and foremost, we're running an interagency process and asking all of the agencies that have received funding through the infrastructure bill, the key agencies, there's many, but energy, commerce, transportation, I know I'm missing one, are some of our leaders, and we're asking them to really own developing a plan around how we're going to ensure that we have workforce development programs aligned to the jobs that will be created through this historic investment. There's so much potential here in terms of transforming our infrastructure system, but also transforming our economy. So it really is, as the president has called for, building from the bottom up and the middle out. So that means ensuring that people have equitable access to the jobs that are being created. So we're, again, as I said earlier, there's dedicated resources built into the infrastructure bill that are for job training, workforce development. So we're making sure that we're making the most of those dollars. There's about $1 billion there, which sounds like a lot, but not really when you think about the challenge and you think about how much the president has proposed through his American Jobs Plan. So to try to make up for the fact that we don't have as much dedicated funding as we would like, we are, again, working with agencies so that as they put out money for broadband, they're asking the public sector actors that are receiving that money, how are you going to approach job training and workforce development to make sure that these jobs are good jobs that all can access? So we're trying to leverage the programmatic money in that way. And then, and we'll have more to say about this next week, we're looking to launch public-private partnerships where we're asking employers, job training providers, community-based organizations, unions, other worker organizations to commit to partnerships that are designed to expand access to high-quality job training aligned with the infrastructure bill investments. We're particularly focused on broadband, transportation with a particular focus on construction, and electrification with a particular focus on charging stations. So we'll have more to say about that next week. We know that you all everybody in this room's already doing that, but we're trying to use the president's voice and bully pulpit to really ensure that all the actors in the system, particularly employers, are having skin in the game and acknowledging that, not just admiring the problem, that as you, in a tight labor market, as you create new jobs, there's going to be inevitably some gaps in those prepared to take those jobs. So we need to think ahead and get ahead of that problem. So that's something that we're really focused on and hoping that all of you can help us advance successfully.
We stand ready. And Carmel, thanks so much for being here with us. Thanks so much for your leadership and walking the walk. Really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you.